Klaus Schwab, the former leader of the World Economic Forum, personally manipulated data to make Brexit look like a disaster. Now, whether or not you think Brexit was a good thing or a bad thing is actually largely irrelevant. The point is that there was a conspiracy to convince you and to convince other European nations that Brexit was some terrible tragedy. And this ties in with something I've been saying for a while now. Britain has no allies. There is nobody out there who wants to help Britain other than the British people themselves. People like Klaus Schwab and Ursula von der Leyen, and yes, probably even Keir Starmer himself, well, they would love nothing more than to see a post-Brexit Britain collapse and fail. So what exactly is this story? Well, it comes out of the Telegraph, and I'm going to read you a short section from the article. Klaus Schwab, the face of the Davos conference in Switzerland for years, allegedly intervened in the WEF's annual global competitiveness report, which ranks countries on productivity and long-term prosperity. In the 2017/2018 report, the UK's ranking improved from 7th to 4th. But Mr. Schwab, 87, wrote to staff that the UK must not see any improvement, as otherwise it would be exploited by the Brexit camp. The final report, published in 2017, showed that the UK had dropped one place to 8th. Okay, so post-Brexit, the UK was actually looking quite good. Things were on the up, according to productivity and future economic outlook. Whether you believe that or not is totally irrelevant. The World Economic Forum themselves, by their own metrics, suggested that Britain was doing okay. But Klaus Schwab and the globalists, they could not have that. So they intervened, manipulated the data, and dumped Britain down. Why exactly have they gone to such extraordinary lengths to convince you and other European peoples that Brexit was a total disaster? And I'll tell you why. It's because they're terrified that the European Union could collapse. If that happens, it's the worst possible thing for the globalists, because all of a sudden, countries like France and Germany are no longer going to be ruled by random foreigners in Brussels. Suddenly, France and Germany are going to be governing for France and Germany, rather than, say, the European project or, in the interests of the whole world. No, they'll start putting their own citizens first, at least in theory, right? That hasn't quite happened in the UK, but I'll talk about why I think that hasn't happened a little bit later on. Take a listen to what Dominik Trzynski, he's a Polish MEP, listen to what he has to say about the prospect of Poland leaving the European Union.
It was worth more for you to pay 365 million euros a year than to allow more Muslims into your country.
Of course, yes, because life has no value. Of course. We did.
At what point would you say, what if they make it 10 million a day? That's 3.65 billion.
We would pay, yes.
What if they pay you 100 million a day?
Even if they would fine us $1 billion a day, we would still fight for our life. Money is not the most important in our life. It's not our core. It is important.
However,
it is important for our economy. But you have to remember that if they would mess up with Poland, they would find Poland taxing their products, and we have the tools to fight back.
What's your tool?
Well, Great Britain left European Union.
That's the point I was going to get to. So would there ever be...
If they would do it, if they would put us in a situation when there is no choice, we would say bye.
In that clip, Dominik Trzynski is talking about how the European Union is fining Poland €1 million per day because they won't take illegal, unvetted migrants from North Africa who've arrived in Europe. They don't want those people in Poland, and good for Poland, frankly. The European Union's response is, well, we are your European overlords. We don't like that you want control over your own borders, so here we're going to financially sanction you. But there's something else very interesting that comes out of that clip. Dominik says, if the European Union keeps going down this route, say they increase the fines, they increase the demands on Poland to take these people into the country, then the Polish people will snap and they will do what the UK did. They will leave. So how, when faced with a situation like that, can the European Union disincentivize a strong nationalist country like Poland from leaving the European Union? Well, they need the one country that did leave to completely fail. I want you to really think about this for a minute, because it doesn't matter if you actually think that Brexit was a total disaster. Maybe you're right. It doesn't matter if you voted to remain. The point that I am making is that right now the European Union is not an ally, they are an adversary. They have a lot more to gain if Britain fails than if it succeeds. And the reason is, if Britain fails in the next 5 or 10 years, then they can go to strong, nationalist, proud countries like Poland, whose economy is soaring, and say, hey, we know you're thinking about leaving the Union, but did you see what happened to Britain? Not good. You don't want that to happen to your country, do you? And that will scare people into remaining as a part of the European Union. So yes, the EU has more to gain if Britain fails than if it succeeds. So we need to stop treating them as if they're an ally, as if they're ever going to help us with any of the problems we face, whether it's economic or at the border. In fact, we can see that they're not willing to help us. Whenever we do a trade deal with them, it's the kind of trade deal where we give away a lot more than we gain, and it actually hurts us, and it hurts the British people. Of course, Keir Starmer is very good at doing those kinds of trade deals. If it comes to the border, you know, the Tories had the Rwanda plan, and I'm not saying it was a good plan, it was a terrible plan. But as they tried to get flights, you know, out of the country and sending illegal migrants off to Rwanda, it was European courts using the ECHR who were saying, no, that's illegal, you can't do that, right? They will use every tool in their toolkit to frustrate the British people and to ensure that we do not succeed as a nation, because that would set a really bad example. If Britain actually gained control of its borders, right, then other countries that are worried about the same kinds of things, like Hungary and Poland and Czechia, well, they would start to think in their heads, hey, Britain left the European Union and now they don't have an illegal migrant crisis. They've got control of their borders. Maybe we should do the same. And the EU desperately does not want that to happen. This is where a lot of politicians have gone wrong. They think in their heads, well, Brexit was a bad thing. That's how they think. And so they think, well, if I just roll over like a dog and show my tummy, the EU is going to tickle it and scratch it. But they're not, okay? Because this isn't like the EU you knew when we were a member. Everything has changed now. So even if you truly believe that Britain was better when we were in the European Union, right now, that is no longer the case. They are genuinely adversarial. They are working to ensure that we do not succeed. That's not a good thing. And I think a lot of people have got that wrong in their heads. People who are Remainers, or people who think, hey, you know, Brexit was a terrible idea, or they've changed their minds and they think that Brexit was a bad thing and we shouldn't have done it. Fine. But you just have to understand that right now the EU is working against us. So all of these proposed solutions, from politicians to the migrant crisis or whatever else, it's never going to work. Paying France money to stop boats coming over the channel, the EU doesn't want that. France doesn't want that.
And again, I will just say this, right? So this is the largest migrant camp. Now, there's a field here, and then there's a bit of a forest, and then just the other side of that forest is the sea, where people take the boats to Britain. The French, for all the, what is it, £1 billion we sent them? Right? They've not put a fence up, have they? There is nothing stopping, in fact, there's well-trodden paths. All they have to do is, if you can make your way to this camp in France, you can stand here, you can call one number, a man can come and meet you, he can bring you across the channel, you can pay him a bit of money, and you walk across that field and you're into Britain. No one's disrupting this. No one.
The point is that I think a lot of people don't realise is they have this wrong idea of what the EU is to us now. Everything changed once we left. Okay, it really, really did. Look, let me know what you think. I think it's very clear and it's very apparent that Britain no longer has any allies in the world. And you know what? If we just realised that, we're alone and our politicians got a grip of it and said, hey, we've got to sort these problems by ourselves and stop asking other countries to help us out, right? If we actually start solving our own problems, Britain could be really powerful again. I mean, historically, when the English lion roars, the world shudders. Okay, and we need a little bit more of that. We need a little bit more pride. We need a little bit more self-control, solving our own problems, independence, right? Because that's what people voted for, but that's not what we seem to have. I think it's all fairly straightforward. It's what we need to do, but politicians don't see it that way. I've talked about it loads in previous videos. I'm not going to talk about it again here. There are loads of things that we can do to solve the problems that we have in this country. They're just tough measures, and they involve you not caring about the rest of the world or what the rest of the world thinks about you. They just involve you caring about your own nation and doing what's right for your own people. And that's something that a lot of our globalist politicians just can't get their heads around. Anyway, 4.5 minutes of rambling. I'm sorry to do that to you. Hopefully you found it interesting. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I think the dog's bored of me anyway. Please do leave a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in a future video. Maybe I will make a video in the future, by the way, specifically about how the European Union is not an ally compared to, you know, how everyone thinks of it. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. I'll put some more thought into it and maybe I'll flesh out a full video. Anyway, till a future video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.